action raw. You come in with your best troops, you best bring more. Already told you I got the juice like Orinthar. Already know what I'm about to do, bet your men fall. Everyone know that we got the truth, all your men falls. So boss, overtaking our enemies. Moves calculated and orchestrated like symphonies. Smooth operated when bringing haters the misery. Top 5 list ain't shit unless you mention me. Yeah, that's why we don't associate. Fuck niggas make them more fuck niggas. Why they procreate, why they overhate. Cause they time is short and a moment late. Let it culminate to they harder race and it palpitate. Cowards perpetrate like they little group is respectable. Talking intellectual, all of you homosexuals, faggots.
There's no one like me. I'm from Nairclaw. There's no one that can match me. My style is impetuous. My defense is impregnable. And I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. I want to eat his children.
I don't want to congregate. I don't want to deal with you. I don't want the fellowship. I ain't trying to build with you. Ain't the UPK. Ain't the truth. Keep it real with you. Defenders of the faith. I got no problem bumping heads with you. All that bullshit, you can take it over there with you. Rather be a houseboy. Rather run with them field niggas. Show them to put in work. Move mountain, crush hills, nigga. Take a dead soul. Breathe life and make it live, nigga. No affiliation, so it's no one to compare with us. Took the Lord's laws and just added it with fear, nigga. Ain't for the body, cause you know like killing head quicker. With these bars, I'm on my grizzly, so bear witness. You spit cold, I spit flu. Don't compare sickness. You floss diamond, I floss fringe. Don't compare dentist. You PK, we men the wall shit. We ain't Christian. Harm one of us, get pistol whipped like the gun got a belt with it. I'm bred different. The competition just a mill. I'm fed different. I stood front line on them fields. I bled different. I'd rather be a corpse than a coward. I'm led different. Shit, I'm led different. Come through like a juggernaut, so don't get in the way. And we take everything serious. We don't play. I wonder now what they gon' say. Shit, we make profits out of shooters like the NBA. You get slayed for switching sides, nigga. We ain't on the same page. Immaculate conception. Wow. These niggas bitch made. I'm sticking with the foundation where my bricks laid. You switch sides, I'd rather switch cage. You was never with us, nigga. Just know we won't miss you, nigga. Right hand hold the scriptures, nigga. Left hip hold the pistol, nigga. How you want it? You can get it spiritual or physics, nigga. Wrong ones to come against, so bring an army with you. No affiliation. When you see us, make the difference with us. No affiliation. When you see us, know we different, nigga. No affiliation. So no, you can't kick it with us. The wrong ones to come against, bring an army with you.
Misunderstood for having some morality, but my people dance spirituality. Lord knows, just a young Hebrew from Killer, California. Used to thug in the street with no sense of order. Used to love to press the line, even test the water, and almost lost my life from slinging and hanging on that corner. I learned to cut the grass so I could see the snakes. I had to decipher between the real and fake. And nowadays, all these niggas do is hate. Treat you like a bitch, sit back and try to manipulate. Yeah, that's why I got it on my own too. You see me rocking with the Hebrews. UPK is how we do. Stand for the Lord, the mother niggas is see-through.
Where the soldiers at? Where the soldiers at?
Wake your game up, my nigga. Ain't no time for this shit. I know you sitting back thinking that life is a bitch. Yes, my nigga, I understand. My nigga, I feel your pain. Yeah. My nigga, we gotta change. This for the can, this for the can.
It's safe to say we curse today, trying to find another way, but all they do is take away. Trying to pray to make a way, while trying to find a safer way. Eat so we can face to face. Please, Lord, save the day, cause everybody at my job always got some shit to say. You might think this shit is crazy, but I deal with this every day. Knowing that we paved the way, I had it up to here today. Listen to the shit to say, make me wanna catch this case, or even if they face away. But I know what those scriptures say. We gon' wait on judgment day, thinking it ain't coming, thinking the Lord bluffing. man. Waiting on the day it's gonna be hotter than the oven, though they treat me like a slave.
With Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out at 1 West on 25th Street, Harlem, New York. Tuesday's Brotherhood class. Priest and officer. If you have any questions, type them in the chat. Get to them as they come in. Tonight, I want to talk about this upcoming election coming up in November. You know, every time this rolls around, our people always kind of urge to go out and vote for this and vote for that. To put the next president in is always, the next election is always the biggest election. You know, I've heard people say you're going to vote or die. You know, our ancestors died, you know, for the right to vote. You know, people out the street dying of selling drugs, that doesn't make it the right thing to do because, you know, somebody dedicated their life for it. But, you know, at that time, they, you know, they thought it was right to better their lives. I can't vote for that, but when you know better, you do better. And we're here to make sure our people have the knowledge and can do better according to the Most High. What He says. Because that's the only way the truth will come into life. So as far as brotherhood, I always like to, you know, start off, let me get out Matthew 12:48. Here's Christ. He laid out what being a brother, and of course, when we say brotherhood, it's all encompassing. So that includes sisters as well. That includes sisterhood, it's synonymous. So we always want to put that out there. So that includes sisters as well. But he laid out what is brotherhood, because they would have you believe that, you know, everybody can be your brother. Even the, you know, people that's trying to, you know, kill and murder you, or people that wouldn't have your best interest at all. People who had us enslaved, all of a sudden they can be your brother. People that shoot us down in the streets, they can be forgiven and become your brother. And that's not what the Most High laid out. That's not what Christ brought to us. You got that?
Matthew chapter 12, verse 48.
That's correct.
Matthew chapter 12, verse 48. But he answered and said unto him that told him, Who is my mother?
Now, this was Christ. He was, you know, out preaching the gospel, whatever, telling the people, you know, message or, you know, how to come into life. You know, preaching to the people at that time. And then they saw his mother and his brother in the crowd, but he was, you know, he was about his work. He wasn't paying no attention. Go ahead.
And who are my brethren?
Okay, go ahead.
Verse 49. And he stretched forth his hand toward his disciples.
So he said, you want to know who my brethren are? And he looked towards his disciples and, you know, pointed towards them. I see them physically, yes, my mother, brother, but you want to know who my brothers are? And he pointed his hand towards his disciples. Go ahead.
And said, Behold, my mother and my brethren.
So right now he's telling you, this is my mother, this is my brother. So right there he's giving a clear description on, you know, how, what it is to be a brother. Go ahead.
Verse 50. For whosoever shall do the will of my Father, which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother.
So right there he's telling you, it's a clear depiction of who he considers to be a brother. Now, this is very important when it comes to, you know, when they tell you you should vote or that type of thing, because the Most High is actually very clear about that too. We're going to get to that in just a second. I'm going to tie it together. Let me get Romans 9:3. Because that criteria on what it is to be a brother, it gets even narrower than that. And I hear they, you know, they always, I hear they hit as far as like who your brother is, that sort of thing. they want you to believe it could be anybody, especially if they are. They say, you know, we're in a Democratic Party. They want you to believe that everybody in the Democrats, brother. Whether you're on the Republican side, you know, the Republican be your brother, or maybe you're independent. You know, they don't pretty much just say anything just to get your vote, especially around this time. You got that?
Come on, sir. Romans chapter 9, verse 3. For I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ.
So this is Paul talking to the brothers in Rome. He's saying that, you know, if y'all could just get this, I wish I could, you know, I would give my very life for who? For it?
For my brethren.
My brother. That means his brothers. Go ahead.
My kinsmen.
Kinsmen. Those that are, you know, related to him, to him, go ahead.
According to the flesh.
So we know two things so far. We know that the brothers are those that do the will of the Father, and those brothers are his kinsmen according to the flesh. Go ahead.
Verse 4. Who are Israelites?
Who are Israelites? That's very important. Go ahead.
To whom pertaineth the adoption,
Go ahead.
and the glory, and the covenants, and the giving of the law, and the services of God, and the promises.
All right, so from those two things, we kind of delineate or give a criteria for who a brother is, and that's very important. Let me get around 17 and 15.
17.
So your brother's not with party or you know, your political affiliation. That's certainly not it. It's not you know,
15.
the people that you have.
Deuteronomy
It's not the
chapter
people that live in your
17,
neighborhood.
verse
It's not-
15. Slide over here.
It's not just a carnal association. It's not people you went to school with or anything like that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee,
That means under no particular circumstances. Go ahead.
whom the Lord thy God shall choose, one from among thy brethren.
All right. So under no certain circumstances, God shall choose one from among our brethren. Go ahead.
Shalt thou set king over thee, thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother.
All right. So you cannot set any stranger above over you, which is not thy brother. So we just read what that criteria was before. One that does the will of the Father and our kinsmen according to the flesh. Our kinsmen, brethren, according to the flesh, who are Israelites. So Joe Biden is not your brother. So you can't set him over you. Kamala Harris definitely is not among your brethren. So you can't set them over. I guess I don't even need to go about Donald Trump. I guess pretty much everybody knows about that. But for some odd reason, we can kind of swayed to believe that because Donald Trump is so evil that by default, his Democrats obviously must be, you know, our friend or force. But we all know that's not true if you just go back and look at the history on that. And I believe a part of that is starting to come out, especially about Kamala Harris. She is, I think she's, her great grandfather was actually Irish, I believe. So she definitely would not fit in that category. She is not your brother. So you're not to set one who the Lord is not chosen, that is not among your brother. And if you look at their record, if you look at, you know, her history, she's put more black men in jail than anybody else in her state when she was a prosecutor. So you definitely know that, you know, she doesn't have good best interests at heart. You look at as the scripture says, look at the fruit that's produced. And that's the fruit that she produced. I put black men in jail. That's another black man who won't be there to take care of his kids. He won't be there to be a husband to his wife. He won't there to make sure that his parents are looked after, or whatever the case may be. That creates a whole nother cycle of poverty, crime, and so forth. We all know that the United States has more people in jail right now than they did during the time of slavery. More people are being locked up now. So to say that, just because we're not in chattel slavery any longer, that slavery is actually ended, that's a misnomer. And we can just look at the Constitution to
Validate that.
validate that. Because if you look at it, like if somebody were to tell you that you can't smoke here, but then say, but if you go out and smoke outside of these blue lines, it's permitted. Well, I didn't outlaw bad smoking. I just gave you the criteria on which you can smoke. So if I say slavery is abolished, except, and I give you an exception, except for one is under conditions of, if you're convicted of a crime, then I didn't abolish it. I just gave you the criteria on which slavery can exist. And you can see right now it's existing to the tune of over 2 million brothers and sisters in prison, in the prison system. So, but as you already know, that the oppressor speaks with full tongue, as Brother like to say. But they'll just tell you that, hey, it's been, 400 years, and slavery is over. And actually, if you, a quick little definition of what slavery actually is, not chattel slavery. Chattel slavery is the property of another individual, while they may not technically be property. Slavery is basically just submission to an outside influence. And as you can see, we pretty much adopted American culture, although we don't receive a lot of the benefits and privileges that Americans enjoy. So you can't call yourself an American citizen, but you definitely are under their influence. A lot of you right now probably already got the grill and the charcoal ready for the Labor Day cookout. What are you partying for? Already. I know you got the alcohol, so what are we celebrating for? Our brothers are still strung out on drugs, are still feel as though they have no other opportunity but to get that money by any means necessary, even that means killing their brother, committing a crime, rob their mama if you have to, or just do whatever's necessary to fulfill a carnal lust that comes to mind. Lost, hopeless. So, but what we don't see that influence that drives a person to that end. And believe me, it's no mistake. This is not by happenstance. Again, if you go to every urban city where Black and brown people congregate, you'll find these same conditions repeated over and over again. And then you have your politicians who actually facilitate that. And then every November you become important and you say, hey, put me in power over you to keep that same cycle going. So to believe that they're going to do something to change your condition is folly. It's foolish. And I know you've heard that it said that the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, if you look at our history, we actually flourished better before we were voting, believe it or not. So you can't look at it and say, well, put your oppressor in a position of authority is going to change your condition. Because we've already seen since the 60s, since the Voting Rights Act was passed, that our condition is actually worsened, actually, believe it or not. As far as education, as far as living conditions, as far as being a brother to people that look like you, a brother to your brother. The neighbors are just gone, it's now just the hood. That's what we refer to it as. There's nothing neighborly about where we live. You know, I used to hear about the neighborhoods back in the day where the neighbors looked out for the neighbors, or they treated your kids like their kids, and so those days are long past. So we definitely know that voting had nothing to do with that. So thou may have not set a king over thee, that is a stranger, which is not thy brother. So that includes Kamala Harris as well. And I know a lot of people are hurt and say, man, she's not even black. Oh, this is not something that we made up. I have an article. You got that article?
Yes.
This is from her father. It was a little article that he wrote.
Where you got highlighted?
Start from there. Yeah.
Where you got highlighted?
And this is his own words, what he was talking about with research he did in his own lineage. What's the title of it?
Reflection of a Jamaican father.
Well, he calls himself Jamaican just specifically because that's where he lived, but his ethnicity, your place of birth or where you live doesn't determine your ethnicity. But if you want to look up the article, that's what it was called. But read again.
What? Read the title.
Just type it.
Reflection of a Jamaican father.
Reflections of a Jamaican father. And start with the highlighted part.
My roots go back within my lifetime to my paternal grandmother, Miss Chrissy Christina Brown, descendant of Hamilton Brown.
Descendant of Hamilton Brown. Who was Hamilton Brown?
Who is on record as plantation and slave owner and founder of Brownstown.
Oh, that's good. So he was on record as being a slave owner and a plantation owner and the founder of Brownstown. And if you look him up, you'll see that he's actually Irish. So that was her father's grandfather. So she's actually Irish, believe it or not, because as we know the scriptures say, you are the seed of your father. That's all I'm saying. So you are the seed of your father. So again, Kamala Harris is not your brother. She is not your kinsman, not according to the flesh, according to what her father said. So I think I have to take the man at his word. He said they're Irish. So no, it's not the will of the Most High, because that's what a brotherhood is. Those who do the will of the Father. The Father shows you can't set somebody who is not thy brother over thee. And we know for sure, definitely, it's not Joe Biden. So that he's just there by default, or they like to say the lesser of two evils. Well, I said you don't resist evil enough. You don't pick between lesser of evils. How about we not choose evil at all? That's the choice. The choice is not to choose evil, not to try to pick, well, this is a little less evil. Because when you cast that ballot for an individual, you're aligning yourself with everything that they agree on. So if they are for abortion, and then you gave them that authority to make sure that abortion continues. And we all know that, well, maybe you may not know, but we're at the tune of almost 500,000 abortions a year. Those are lives, people who are not going to exist now. And then to make it worse, as if it could get worse, they're selling off the baby body parts. I know that's a little rough and people don't like to think about that, but I think that came out a couple of years back where the people from the Planned Parenthood were caught on tape actually negotiating for the sale of particular body parts, and she was the woman from the Planned Parenthood was describing the technique and procedures that would use based on the particular body part that needed to be harvested. If you needed a brain, that they would, make sure they wouldn't damage the brain as they would, get the body parts out. And I believe she was trying to negotiate a Ferrari or something out of the deal. If she could facilitate some sort of agreement between her and a potential buyer. And this went on and on. And when the tape came out, you can check the videotape is still on the internet, by the way, so you can look at something anytime. So that actually profiting from the death of black and brown people, profiting off of your death. So again, you look at the fruit that they produce. How could you even think to cast your ballot for somebody like that, to put them in power? To do what? To commit more murder? To make more money off of your suffering? I think not. So let me get 1 Corinthians 11 and 3. So position or they say that the election is so important because we got to vote president. The president will be in power for the next 4 years. Be it Donald Trump or be it Biden, Kamala.
1 Corinthians 11 and 3.
That particular position, or what they call the head of state, that's the actual, I guess, title of the position, but depending upon the form of government that you have, it could be a king, if you have a monarchy, a queen, if you have a monarchy. It could be like in Germany, they used to have the Führer or whatever back then. So the title changes depending upon the form of government. Here we have a presidency, but it's actually called the head of state, and that's the lead position of whatever country you're in. But here, the Lord again is very clear on who your head is. You got that? Yes.
Corinthians chapter 11 verse 3. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ.
He wants you to be aware that the head of every man is Christ. So it's not something that you vote on. He's telling you right clear, the head of every man is Christ. Go ahead.
And the head of the woman is the man.
And the woman also has a head. It's the man. Go ahead.
And the head of Christ is God.
And the head of Christ is God. So you see here's a clear hierarchy. So you're not to put somebody in authority over you that is not one of your brethren. And in fact, the Most High gave you a head. The head of every man is Christ. So to then go back and try to say we're going to put somebody in over you as your head or head of state, as they say, it's not according to the scriptures. And you can see the result. We've been, our condition has been worse and worse ever since we, try to follow and become, be like imitative people that we clearly are not. So we have a head, and our head has given us clear instructions based on him that sent our head, which is the Most High. And who is his brothers is those that do the will of the Most High. So that's what we should follow. That's what we would do. So you want to learn how to do that? Come to class. Get in these scriptures, get in these classes, and we'll show you exactly what that path is.
That's right.
Let me get, let's see, 2 Peter 1 and 10. And every 4 years, this pattern repeats. It's like Black lives only matter around election time for some odd reason. Then your cares and concerns all of a sudden, they will come forth, or at least they like to pretend to. But this year it was kind of odd because I saw Biden on TV. He wouldn't even commit to say what he would do for Black people. You would think we would at least get the man to say, well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. So even in that, your so-called vote is being taken for granted. And this year, mail in. So I want all of you to put this in your vocabulary. It's called ballot. And where's like ballot stuffing and ballot. It's where basically, because all the ballots have to become mail-in, and the mail is sorted by zip code, they already know based on the zip code how those people in that area are vote. So they can vote by just discarding ballots from a particular zip code as if it was going to matter anyway. and that's if it would have made a difference. So to put your stock or your hope or your cares, or you really think that it's going to make a difference, is just foolish. You're fooling yourself.
That's
Again,
right.
Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a difference. So,
Right.
Because those police officers, the ones that have the power to, whether you're gonna kill you at the next traffic stop, or because you whipped out your wallet too fast or something like that, and you feel as though if my life will change, I'm gonna shoot you. Legislation is not going to change their disposition towards you. No matter how many laws you pass or whatever written agreements, that's not going to say, well, hey, you know what? This person's life is just as valuable as mine because of that law that was passed last week saying that I have to treat everybody fair and equal. If that's what you believe, you're fooling yourself. That sounds crazy, even saying it. So there's nothing on paper that's going to convince your oppressor that your life now has value. So to think that something's going to change is because a particular candidate that you're all excited about having to get in office. It sounds ludicrous. It's crazy. I wouldn't expect anything different. But if you want to speak of an election, which is when you elect, it's more like a choice. It's a choice in position or authority. You make elections almost every day, not every 4 years. When you elect to go left or right, or whether you want to walk or drive, or you want Pepsi versus Coke, you elect to make a particular choice. That's pretty what it is. But the Most High, again, if you really want to know what the true election that you have, again, all answers are right here in these scriptures. You got that?
Con. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 10. Wherefore the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure.
Okay, right here, give diligence. That means you're going to be earnest, and you're going to be forthright, unyielding. You're going to be steadfast in this action that you're taking. Go ahead.
To make yourself calling and election sure.
You're going to make your calling and election what? Sure. Go ahead.
For if ye do these things, ye shall never fall.
So these things, if you're diligent in this your election, not the election of which oppressor is going to tell you what to do for the next 4 years, but your election sure regarding what the Most High tells you to do. He said, if you do these things, you should never fail. You should never fall. It's lying. So go back up to verse 4. Go up to verse 4. Because right here, it's telling you if you do these things, you should never fall. We go back above that so we can find out some of what these things are. Go to verse 4. Go ahead.
2 Peter chapter 1, verse 4. Whereby are given unto us exceeding great and precious promises, that by these ye might be partakers of the divine nature.
The divine divine nature whereby great and exceeds precious promises. And we know these promises were only given to Israel. We know that, but by you might be partakers of the divine nature. Now, I know that probably sounds familiar, but not the divine nature that you think of when you go to church. That's definitely not that. Divine just meaning holy, and holy is to be separate. That's for a particular purpose according to the Most High. And your nature is just simply the characteristics. So right here, what you're saying is the characteristics to make you separate according to the Most High. I know it's a lot for just 2 words, but divine nature has nothing to do with no triune or 3 heads or whatever the heck. I never understood that thing anyway. Nobody for life of me can never give me understand of it anyway, because I don't think they know. But if divine nature is just simply that, again, divine, and then holy, and holy means to be separate, and your nature is just the characteristics of it. Go ahead.
Having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust.
All right, so you escape into the world. The world is filled with lust, which is simply carnal desires, or that basically leads to death, because those lusts is what brings you to sin, and we know the wages of sin is death. So through these promises, you're able to escape that. You're able to escape that through this divine nature. Go ahead.
Verse 5, and besides this, giving all diligence.
All diligence, meaning that you're going to give it all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. Meaning that you're going to do this thing with everything that you have. Go ahead.
Add to your faith virtue.
And you're going to add to your faith virtue. And we know to add to your faith, can you pull that? Give me Hebrews 11 and 1. So you're going to add, so including your diligence, you're going to add to your faith. All right? And through these things, these are the things that you need to do to make your election sure. That right now, these outlining the things that you can do to make your election sure that you never fail. And that's not the election that comes every November where you put another oppressor over you, or your local councilman, the hope he's going to somehow get the drugs off the street, or make the school better. These things somehow miraculously never happen, and then you're forgotten about until the next election. Then all of a sudden, it's the most important time ever, and it comes around again and again. But right here, the Most High is outlining how to make your election sure. And right now, one of those things is going to add to your faith virtue. But a lot of you may already be familiar with this. We'll find out what is faith.
Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
All right, so it's the substance, not symbolism, but the substance. Symbolism is a figurehead of promises that, that something's going to happen. And, hey, we're going to clean up the streets, we're going to give you more money to make the schools better. And, we're going to sing Kumbaya and all the, we're going to defund the police, and everybody's going to live happily ever after. That's symbolism, not substance. Of things hopeful. And what are we going to be hoping for? Salvation. And salvation is not going to come through you voting for your oppressor. Let me go back to Peter. Verse 1 and 5. Got it?
Verse 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right here. So we're going to add to your faith, and just that faith was going to add to that virtue, right? And virtue is basically your principles. Principles and a code of conduct, basically. And your code of conduct can be found right here. So right here is saying that it's the substance of things hoped for, along with your code of conduct. Your conduct is your actions. So you have faith and you have works. All right, go ahead.
And to virtue, knowledge.
And to virtue, knowledge. Knowledge is to be aware, things that you learn about through experience. So you put all those things together, and he's outlining how to make your election sure through the Most High, that you will never ever fall. And right now, we are definitely a fallen being. But right here, you can get up, you can stand up according to the Most High and be above all nations. Here, you got to get back into these scriptures. You live against what the Most High says, you're going to continue to fall. You want to rise, this is how you do it. Go ahead now.
Verse 6. And to knowledge, temperaments. Temperance.
And to knowledge, temperance. And temperance is how to moderate your behavior. All right. So not too much, not too little. So if you, let's say, brother likes to, you drive, you're not gonna go too slow, you're not gonna go too fast, where you're gonna kill yourself. You want to take a drink, you drink to relax and ease the mind, but you're not going to do so to the point where you're falling down, stumbling, causing yourself to sin. Temperance. All right, go ahead.
And to temperance, patience.
And to temperance, patience. Now, patience is more or less how can I put this? To endure regardless of the outside influence or circumstances, basically. So it was said in the scriptures that how often shall I forgive my brother? He said 70 times. Patience. The same opportunity you were given by grace, you're going to extend that to your brother as well. So you're going to have patience, and go ahead on to what?
And patience to godliness.
Patience to godliness. Again, same opportunity you were given. Again, we're going to be perfect like the Most High. So again, we begin to put these things together, and this is a lot. So it's not an easy walk. It's not an easy walk. If it was, I guess everybody could do it. But these are the things that's being outlined that you should never fall ever. And basically, it's outlining all the things that the Most High has set for you to make your election sure. Go ahead, verse 7.
Verse 7. And to godliness, brotherly kindness.
Brotherly kindness. So here we have the brotherhood, and to brotherly kindness, you're going to show reverence to your brother. You're going to lift him up, and then he lifts you up, and then you lift up a whole nation. So it starts from that one brother to a sister, to a family, to a neighborhood, to a nation. And that's one of the greatest commandments, I believe. Go ahead.
And to brotherly kindness, charity.
And to charity. Not giving up monetarily, but to be charitable to your brother. Meaning that the way you interact with him. Brother, how you doing? Well, the family. How you, is anything you need? What can I do? Being charitable to the brother. Lift up his spirit, or not just that, to see if he, you know, in need of anything, emotion. Maybe his brothers want to talk. Who knows? Whatever his needs may be, you're going to be there to lift him up. Go ahead.
Verse 8, for if these things be in you and abound.
So all of these things that we just outlined, if they be in you, and they be in you in abundance, if they be in you, make it more plentiful, if they're just flowing through you, just unendingly. Go ahead.
They make you that ye shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Meaning that it will bear fruit. So then, all those things that you're trying to vote for, those things they're trying to promise you in the next election, these are the things that's going to break their earth. Because these things have a sort of a roll off or a trickle down effect. They'll begin to manifest themselves in other areas of your life. Because there's not an area of life that these scriptures don't touch on. Be it a relationship with your brother, your mother, your friend, be it in business, no matter what it is, these scriptures has an answer for you according to how the Most High prescribed. And he's telling you with every one of these choices, you got to reflect and say, well, what did the scriptures say? How do I deal with other people in my nation? Because that's the brotherly thing to do. Not going to the polls and, you know, trying to see, you know, what the other nation has, because you know they don't have your best interest at heart. Never have and never will. But here, it's telling you that these are the things on how to deal with your brother, your kinsman, according to the flesh. These are the things that clearly outline how to be fruitful in the knowledge of the Most High. So those things are how to make your election sure. With every choice, you're supposed to reflect, well, you know, what does the scripture say? Or they say, or the scriptures say you want to seal that knowledge in your forehead. When it comes to remembrance, you say, well, you know, this is what the scriptures say. That's how you choose. You're not choosing death. You're not choosing sin. You're choosing life. That is an election. That's a true election. That's the only election that you should be making. The only choice that you have. A choice unto life. That is the election. That choice is made every day, not every 4 years. Every single day. That is the choice that you have set before you, as outlined. He says, if you do these things, you'll never ever fall. You'll never fall. Let me get the next one.
Verse 9. But he that lacketh these things is blind.
But he that lacketh these things is blind. Meaning he can't. If you don't have any of these things, if you don't have brotherly kindness, if you don't have charity, if you don't have temperance, you don't have patience, godliness, if you're not diligent, if you don't have faith and virtue, you're totally unaware. Frankly, you're not even alive. Go ahead.
And cannot see afar off.
You cannot see afar off. So when they tell you these things are going to happen, you might actually believe it in the next election. They tell you that, you know, if you do these things, I'm going to do this for the economy, or you won't have police reform, and that's going to make your life all better. But if you have these things that you can already see, based on what we've already been through, you can see well beyond what they're saying. That's not even, you know, their line is. It's not even possible. It's not true. But if you don't have these things, you don't know. You readily accept anything that the oppressor says. You might actually believe, you know what, we just come together, march hand in hand, and, you know, get together, and, you know, he see that I'm human and he's human, and not knowing war is in his heart. Go ahead.
And hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins.
And forgot that he was purged of his old sins. So once you come into the truth through grace, you are that old man is gone. All those things, all those sins that you committed is done. You're a new person now. So with these things, once you come into the knowledge of the truth, those old sins are gone. Now we're a new creature. Go ahead.
Verse 10. Wherefore the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure.
To make your calling and election sure. So it's not a maybe, not an if. It's saying if you do these things, surely. Go ahead.
For if ye do these things, ye shall never fall.
You shall never fall. So these are the things that's outlined where you can rise to be a brother. And again, being a brother is not going to oppose to give some oppressor authority over you and your family, expecting somehow to give you salvation or to bring you peace or some sort of happiness in your life, in your neighborhood, or any other endeavor in life. Actually, our neighborhoods were actually better suited or thrive better when we were actually had to depend on each other. At that point in time, when we turned to depend on another nation to do these things for us, that's when everything went awry. Nobody is going to have your best interest in heart more than what you do. So if you base what's best for you based on what the Most High said, based on the scriptures, then you should never fall. And the Most High told you that your head is Christ. So to actually try to put someone else in that position is not according to the scriptures. It's going against the Most High, basically. And so this chaos then ensued. And you can see the chaos playing out every night on the news. I believe we just had another a couple more shootings out in Seattle. A guy just blatantly just shot somebody in the head.
Right. Yeah.
And then, unless the protesters believe tried to apprehend him, went to go hit him in the head, hit the guy, just shoot in the head with a skateboard. He shot somebody else in the chest, and shot somebody else in the hand, and you have people in the news media right now saying that he was justified.
Right.
They said that no, he had a right after he just shot somebody in the head to shoot two more people. And then he tried to give himself up. He's like, hey, you know what? He just shot two people. Let me put my hands up and walk down here to no police don't want to question me or at least take me in to find out what happened. He walking in the middle of the street trying to give himself up. The police said, get out the street. Get out the street. It was not right after he just murdered somebody and shot two other people. They didn't see any threat. They didn't see any need to question him or whatever. And so these are people that you want to put over top of you to make decisions about what's going on in your life, rather than the Most High, like He ordained. So these are people that you look to for guidance, that you want to walk hand in hand with, that you want to call your brother. Like they have your best interest at heart, based on what? So another one, back to the Joe Biden, I think he's one of the leading candidates they're trying to get everybody to vote for.
Right.
And again, I'm not for Donald Trump either, because we all know, his history is clear. mean, going all the way back to the Central Park Five, and I believe he still never came out and apologized for that. And I believe he wanted them to get the death penalty for something they didn't even do. And so how long that's been going on? So it took the invention of the cell phone for us to have video of us, being oppressed and basically just being mistreated for all this to come about. Well, black people been saying this for ages. Before the cell phone videos were out, we've been saying this, but they never, the oppressors, the people that you want to vote for, they never paid any attention to it. It wasn't until now, for the death of George Floyd, where it was just unequivocally, undeniable. They said, well, I guess we gotta give them that. Go ahead.
They still don't believe that. They still think the police were doing their job.
Well, yeah, that's what the officer that kneeled on his neck, he's saying that he didn't die because of the pressure he was putting on his neck. He's saying that he died due to drugs being in the system, basically. That's his defense, right? And
they never proved that.
that's what he's saying. So again, they hold themselves unaccountable, as the scripture might say. So I'm not surprised about that. So even with the video evidence, you still have your naysayers because your lives have no value. You can't look to your oppressor to give your life value. It will never happen. They haven't valued our lives since we were kidnapped, snatched up, and brought here. And I don't believe that a couple of videos are going to give you a life value now. But how do we give our life value? The Most High laid it out right here. If you do these things, you make your election sure, and you do these things diligently, you will never ever fall. So if you don't fall, you can only rise. And you get Deuteronomy 28:1. So if you're not falling and you do these things, that you're going to rise. That's what the Most High said.
You see somebody else.
So again, not promoting either or, because I don't think that you can choose whether you want to be shot with a 9mm or 357 and saying, well, it's the lesser of two evils, so I'm going to get shot by this gun, not this gun. That's basically what you're saying, because both of them equals death, be it Democrat or Republican, either or. And that's the choice, or the illusion of choice that America has put before you. When Joe Biden say, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, like he determines what it is for you to be black or for your life to have value, basically. And that's that's how they think about you. That's what they think of you. And again, if it wasn't an election year, he probably wouldn't speak to you. And I think he was on video, I believe, saying back when he was, I don't know if he was a senator yet, I believe he was running for office. He said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a segregated jungle, meaning that that's at the particular time when the United States was trying to integrate the school system, and he basically was saying he didn't want his kids to be educated with black students, and he equated it to a jungle. So, to my knowledge, he hasn't clarified that statement, unless you think somewhere in his heart that he has changed his opinion on that, or somehow changed his mind, or somehow that he thinks more highly of you, but simply here to placate you, to get you to vote for him so he can get power, to get more money. That's basically what it comes down to. For him, I believe it's about money, but that's likely that's my own opinion. But again, you can't beg the oppressor to give your life value. And it's not going to happen whether it be Biden or Kamala Harris or any other politician, be it Trump, Pence, or whatever. So, yeah. So some of you may believe that, or hear the, when they talk about Biden, and, like, the country's we can't do 4 more years of Trump. The whole country's just gonna, go to hell or whatever. Well, we're already there. We're already in now. So I honestly, you probably wouldn't notice. But let me, there's a particular article that I was looking at that came out about Joe Biden and his history. Yeah. And I just wanted to give people an idea of the type of, again, that choice between death and death, basically, is what they're giving you. Of course, they're not phrasing it like that, I am, because either choice you have is not according to the election that the Most High gave you. You start with that. Just a little bit of background on the history that Joe Biden has as far as his disposition toward about black people. Go ahead and start with that.
Washington, in September 1994, as President Bill Clinton signed the new Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, an elaborately choreographed ceremony.
So here you have in 1994, Bill Clinton, he was one responsible for the 3 strikes law, or whatever, that put so many black people in jail for basically life for just consecutive minor offenses. So, if you had 3 petty thefts, lock them. So his thing was to lock up as many black people as possibly could to keep that prison industrial complex going. So right here, this is their outline and showing history that
Right.
of how Biden's role in that. Because of course, as a senator, the president is in the executive branch. He's responsible for executing the laws. It's the Congress that actually passes the law, and then the president signs them, signs the bill once they pass it through the House. So here they're showing you his role in locking up tons and tons of black people during that course of time, because he's been a senator since I know he's been in politics since like the 70s. I'm not exactly sure when he became a senator, maybe around late 80s, but he's been a senator for a long time. Go ahead, pick that up.
For Mr. Clinton, the law was immediate, an immediate follow through on his campaign promise to focus more federal attention on crime prevention. But for Mr. Biden, the moment was the culmination of his decade-long effort to more closely marry the Democratic Party and law enforcement.
So right now, you have this whole thing about defund the police, because in our minds, we think that that's the cause of all our ills, all our woes. So when you take away the police department somehow, the suppressors or somehow stop murdering us. So right now, to get elected, Biden was pushing for and basically championing all those prior bills that you see the effects of right now. The militarization of the police, when they got the military-style weapons or the body armor, and some of them got grenade launchers and Black Hawk helicopters. So basically it turned into a military zone. So now you're seeing the effects of the legislation that Biden pushed for back in the 90s when Clinton was president. So now he'll tell you that he loves black people, luck, but to give them the instruments to kill them, basically.
Right.
But that, I mean, his record speaks for itself. So, but again, it's symbolism over substance. They'll tell you all day that they love you, but if you look at his record, it's a record of death and destruction towards black people. If you can't lock him up, he's going to give the police department the means to kill him. Go ahead, pick up.
And to transform the country's criminal justice system in the process. He had won. The truth is, Mr. Biden had boasted a year earlier in a speech on the Senate floor, every major crime bill since 1976 that comes out of this Congress, every minor crime bill has had the name of the Democratic senator for the state of Delaware, Joe Biden.
Since 76.
76.
What was that?
76.
76. Some of you, I guarantee most of you probably weren't even born then. So before you were even born, he was putting in legislation to oppress and perhaps even murder you through the police force. Since 76, he's made it his life's work to your destruction.
Yeah. All of this.
Since 76. So somehow you believe that now if you put him in a position as head of state, that somehow he's going to have your best interest at heart, that he's going to somehow, make your life better. But for those of us in ISUPK, we didn't need that article. We already know who these oppressors are. We can read what the Most High says. That we only have, the only head that we have is Christ. But I know some of our people are stiff-necked people. So that's why we're bringing this out. And this is something that a quick Google search can bring up. Since 76, when he said in his own words, there's not a piece of legislation as far as crime goes that hasn't gone through Congress that didn't have his support or didn't have his name. Well, that's what it means with his name on it. Because every senator, signs their name on a particular bill to show that they support it. So since 76, he has been supporting your murder and your death by way of law enforcement. And that's who you want to get behind. That's who you want to elect to be over. That's who you choose over rather than what the Most High says. So there's an election that the Most High has prescribed to you to make your election sure that you will never fall. And then there's with the election that America is selling you every 4 years, that illusion. So you can tell by what he's produced, you can tell by his actions what he has in store for you. So you're just going to get more of it. Now, maybe not as blatant as say Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to be more in your face. You know what you're going to get with Donald Trump because he's going to tell you. Whereas Biden is a little bit more slippery with it. He's a little bit more slithery with his actions. But the result is just the same. You got any more than some more than
Yeah, you want to read some more?
Go ahead.
Now, more than 25 years later, Mr. Biden makes his third run for the White House in a crowded field of Democrats, many calling for ambitious criminal justice reform. He must answer for his role in legislation that criminal justice experts and critics say helped lay the groundwork for the mass incarceration that has devastated America's black communities.
Devastated black community. So they're telling you right now his hand and role in this since 76, man. So you're talking about a couple generations, a few generations that he's impacted. So whether he wins this election or not, the impact of the legislation that he supported, the effects of that is going to be felt for generations to come, because those laws aren't going anywhere. So so it just depends upon how far or how much the damage is going to do, how much further can he, prolong that. He'll, give you a song and dance, and that's even if, because to date I haven't even heard anybody question him on it, because they'll, say and do anything to win. And black people, they have gotten us worked up in such a feverish pitch over hating Trump, that you're not even questioning what Biden did or what is he doing now. So we just gonna vote for him dismindlessly, basically. Well, the Most High says to make your election sure, we should be voting for either one of them. You can't support one over the other like the other choice is even better. Don't beg to give your life importance, because basically they just got death in another jail cell waiting for your children and your children's children. The man's been doing this since '76, and I don't see him stopping now, whether he's president or not. You get some more on that?
Mr. Biden apologized in January for portions of his anti-crime legislation, but he has largely tried to play down his involvement, saying in April that he got stuck with shepherding the bills because he was a chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. But in an examination of his record based on newly obtained documents and interviews with nearly 24 longtime Biden contemporaries in Washington and Delaware, indicate that Mr. Biden's current characterization of his role is in many ways at odds with his own actions and rhetoric.
This man hates black people, hates Hispanics. Now, I know that's a little odd because you think because he's a Democrat, so he must be for the party for black people. But you got to remember that he's been there since '76, so he's sort of he's what they call a segregationist. Not because he believes we'd be better off apart. He's a segregationist because he believes that black lives don't matter, that you're less than, that you're inferior. Basically, you're there to work. If you're not there to work, then you're there to die. Go ahead.
Mr. Biden arrived in the Senate in 1973.
So he's been there since '73. It's a lot. I don't want to cheat him out of his 3 years.
I was 5. Dang.
So he's made a career out of imprisoning and killing black people since '73, before you even born. Go ahead.
It says having forged close ties with black constituents, which means you got black people also working against us too, which we've always had, which is what we call the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They have always worked against us, and then they've always worked against us with Pharaoh and the Romans. You understand what I'm saying? So he worked alongside, they say, with black constituents and law enforcement since 1973. So he's been beating us down for what's that, over almost 4 decades?
Yes, since '73. And you think all of a sudden today, he in 2020, he has to change of heart. You're fooling yourself. He's just not, if more, dangerous than Trump. And I say more because somehow our people are under the illusion that he has a care and concern for black people. Because he was vice president to an African that they posed as a black person. Obama is not black. His skin may be dark, but he is not black. His father was from what, Sudan or
Kenya.
Kenya. Yeah, his father was from
He's
Kenya.
an African. He's not a Negro. He's an African.
Yeah, he is definitely from Africa. Same thing with Kamala Harris. Why do you think they found her acceptable? We just read earlier, her father, or her father's father was an Irish plantation owner.
Right.
And then he married a East Indian.
You know what's crazy about that Irish plantation owner? Every time we begin to talk about slavery, they always try to bring up how the Irish was in slavery too. When you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but you got this cracker right here. That's an Irish slave plantation owner, which her father comes down that line, and then her mother's on the other side, which is an East Indian, which is Elam. She's an Elamite. So by nature, she's an Edomite and an Elamite. So she's left on both sides.
Exactly. But
You know?
because she has
That father.
pigmentation in her skin,
Again, exactly.
they're going to give you the symbolism, not the substance.
Right.
The symbolism that she's one of your brethren, which she is not.
And that's what we fall for all the time. We always fall for that symbolism.
Exactly. So Obama wasn't your brother.
Symbolism.
You can look at this record. You can look to see he didn't. Unless you're transgender, Obama didn't do anything for you.
Right.
You can't name one piece of single legislation, or if that's what you're putting your hopes in or your faith in American legislation or laws, you can't even name a piece of that where he put something in your favor. And you can't say healthcare because people still don't have that. I've read the healthcare bill. It didn't do anything for you.
Right.
And over the years, it just gets worse and worse. He purposely had triggers in the healthcare bill that didn't take effect until he's well out of office.
Right.
I'm not going to get into the details of that, but basically, it's going to bankrupt Social Security. It's going to have money anyway. It's going to take money out of other programs that people depend on to live. It's going to take money out of that and give you health care in name only. But most people can't afford the premiums. So while they'll tout that you have health care, you can't actually afford to pay for the deductibles. So yeah, you got health care on paper, but you can't afford it still.
Right.
So if anything, he made it worse. So, but again, you gotta, all that's, if you wanna go ahead and take your time to read the pages of the health care bill, you're willing to do so. Nobody in their right mind would vote for that if they actually would have read the thing. But of course, that's what you expect when you elect somebody to be over you that is not one of your brothers. So now he brings a segregationist as his vice president who hates black people, been signing and championing legislation, so like I said, 73.
Yeah.
Most of you weren't even born then. And he said, in his own words, you can't find a piece of legislation that doesn't have Biden's name on it. So that includes the 3 strikes law. That includes just the mass incarceration of people coming out the civil rights era, or when the crack epidemic hit. Those are the sentencing guidelines. Remember they passed those where you get you have some powder cocaine, and because of the expense of it, I don't know how many people out there familiar with the illicit drug trade or that game, but
Right.
that basically crack, it was just a cheaper way to get coke because you can cook it down to a little rock and it has a tiny weeny bit of cocaine in it. So here you got pure coke, and then you got stones that's basically baking soda, mannitol, or fentanyl, or whatever the hell you can put in a rock in a tiny amount of coke. But somehow the guy that gets caught with cocaine, he gets probation and drug treatment.
Right.
You get you have maybe like 5 stones in your pocket. You gotta do 7 to 15.
Right.
Intent to distribute. Hell, they might even try to hit you with a kingpin.
Right.
7 stones in your pocket.
Right. How about that?
You're going to jail, damn near doing life.
Right.
When chemically there was less cocaine in the crack than there was in the powder. Those are the type of sentencing guidelines that he said that he got his name on. So through that, they sent thousands and thousands of black people to prison. Why? Because the education system, again, was poor. You come out of there. And again, the education system was never designed for you to be able to support yourself. It was which is simply a system to turn out a low-class labor force. And unless those manufacturing jobs begin to be automated with machines, there are going to be a few of them left. So if you got any type of run-in with the law, that pretty much just killed all your chance of getting one of the low-class labor force jobs. So then you see people down the street or around the corner or across town that say, hey, you know what? You know, you get a couple of these things off, boom, you making a couple thousand in a few hours, as opposed to starving, eating oodles and noodles every day.
How about that?
You gotta be damn near crazy to pass that up, which most of our people fell into that trap. And he put his name on that legislation to make sure that you would spend the next 7 to 15 years of your life in prison if you like. And that's if they didn't give you life after they added on to the 3 strikes law. And then you know life. And if you're lucky, when you maybe 67 years old, they might let you out. That's if you didn't die in prison. So that's free labor, because you know when you're in prison, you're working for Walmart or Amazon or whichever company that pays the most. You're working for them now for pennies on the dollar. So that's what your life is worth. You want to know who Black Lives Matter? That's how they matter to them. So if they don't kill you and sell you off as a baby part during abortion, they give you substandard education and then try to get you with the drug trade.
Right.
And if the drug trade doesn't get you, then you have the officer ready to blow your head off if you reach for your wallet too fast. So
right.
You just look right. But as they say, the first step in avoiding a trap is to know that there is one.
Right.
And right here, believe it or not, this is how prophetic this is. In these scriptures, it tells you who your enemy is. It tells you that they have war in their heart, that they never had your best interest in mind, and that they never will.
Right. To
separate yourselves from them. It tells you to separate from them for a reason. You keep trying to integrate with somebody who hates you. All right. Let me see. You know what? Let me go ahead.
Last scripture.
That's fine. All right. Let me go to Deuteronomy 21. Deuteronomy 21.
Deuteronomy 21.
Yeah. So again, you may not set somebody above you who is not your brother. And clearly, by his record, Biden, Harris, Trump, Pence, none of these people are your brother. And they have, the only interest they have is in your fall. But here the Most High said, make your election sure. And you make your election sure by doing those things as he outlined, how to be a brother. So, when you follow the Most High, you do the things you'll never fall, then you can only rise. But how can we rise? Go ahead.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall come to pass,
and that it shall surely happen. Go ahead.
If thou shalt hearken diligently,
you're going to listen with all your might, with all effort. Go ahead.
Unto the voice of thy Lord, of thy God.
Okay.
To observe and to do all of his commandments.
To observe, meaning you are aware of, and not just being aware or have knowledge of them. Once you learn them, you're then to do them, put them into action, to apply them, to make your election sure. That election is that choice. That's the only true election that we have. It's the choice between life and death. Go ahead.
Which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations.
He will set thee on high above all nations. So you would never have, not only will you never ever fall, but he's going to set you above all nations. And that's the true position that we're in. That's the election. That's the choice that you have. So if you truly have a choice, if there's a choice to be made, if you can call it that, I don't really see there is no choice. We don't have any choice. We either serve the Most High. That's the only choice that I see. And to call it anything else is a fallacy. So with that, I'm going to pass the class over to priest and officer with us.
Security announcements. We are the Isupk out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under the commanding general Yohana. New rules for brothers and sisters. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the word. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother or sister will get permission from the head to marry. Time, which is a commandment. You can find this in Numbers 18 and 21 and Malachi 3, 8 to 10. It means 10th in the Hebrew and is pronounced ma'ashura. A tenth of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Priest fund, a free will offering for the priest, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like to give, up and coming holy convocation is memorial blowing of the trumpets, the first of the 7th month, Thursday, September the 17th, 2020. That's Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, 24th to the 25th verse. Reminder, Akim and Aquakian to check on social media such as isupk.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and so on for Isupk events and material. If a brother wants to be a trooper in the school, then he is to start wearing all black, which includes black boots, shirts, pants, headband, or scarf. And with that, we're going to give one courtesy salute to the teacher, men of Israel, Amajim Shabbat. Amajim. Amajim. Shabbat. Amajim Shabbat. Amajim. Barak. Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbat Barakatah.
Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shabbat Barakatah.
Class dismissed.